we're going to try to present this, all three of us, and do this in 10 minutes, which I think is pretty much a challenge. So with me, Jérémie Rappaz, who's a data scientist, Sarah Sermondadaz, who's a journalist and science journalist, and deputy editor-in-chief at Heidi.news, and myself, I'm a journalism researcher. And we got together for this project that we called Media Laboratory. It's not a very, very specific name. But the idea was to team up and give various news media some tools to create better data journalism, but not any old data journalism, to really help data journalism amongst journalists who don't practice it on a daily basis. So bringing data into the everyday practices of non-data journalists. As you probably realize, over the last couple of years, we're in an increasingly a kind of quantified society. I think COVID and the environment are two very good examples of having to work with data, even though the stories are kind of not specifically only data related. So the idea was to find some kind of tools to help us do this. There were really four components to this project. A practices component which sought kind of to define what we wanted to do. A software development component which was really building the tools we'd identified we wanted. Then we had all sorts of questions about, what it should look like as an output, as a story. So questioning how data and visualization is best integrated into story and the relationship between the visualizations, the data, and the story. And then I think which sometimes we forget to do is really question how this is then perceived by the audience itself. How did we do this? So I'll talk about how we kind of framed what we wanted to do. My journalism research colleagues and myself at the Academy of Journalism in Neuchâtel, we first set out to better understand what were the needs in the newsroom. And here we got kind of a shock, what we called, I guess, a reality check. Because we wanted to know what the obstacles were, and we expected them to be very technical, that we would kind of find this toolbox or kind of checklist of things that they wanted, very sophisticated tools, where in fact a lot of tools are out there, exist, but really what the problems were from talking to data journalists, normal journalists, was a lack of access to the data, which obviously, when I say access, is actually good structured data being there, that we can't necessarily just solve with technology, but really a lack of time, and then a lack of data-related skills within the newsroom. So instead of developing very specific tools, we sought to take a data dashboard approach. What do we mean by a data dashboard? A data dashboard is an underlying generic technical infrastructure that allows us, or allows journalists and newsrooms to build, I could call it a repository of key data visualizations related to a specific topic. So the technology is generic, and then we can decline according to whatever topic we want, and with that we built also a roadmap for replicating, creating new dashboards. Sarah will talk about the climate dashboard that we collaborated on as part of this project, which is now online at Heidi.news a little bit later. Then we also sought to talk to journalists about what we were creating, and a certain amount of new needs kind of appeared as well. We also noticed that more could be done to help journalists get the message across. And that's why on top of the dashboard itself, we added kind of the ability to create little information cards that can be overlaid over the text, that can be overlaid over the graphics, that just help explain how the data was gathered, that explain key concepts, key indicators that can be generic, that don't need to be rewritten every time a story is written. And so we developed that on the side because it's a need that really came up from the newsrooms themselves. Having this knowledge base, from the interviews we had at least, we expect it to relieve journalists from the need to re-explain the same thing every time, and also to differentiate between the different audience members, which is difficult to do on analog media, but it's very easy to do on digital media. So people who have an understanding of the R0 of COVID don't need to click or get any other info, but people who are limited with their data skills or who don't understand can just get extra information. Now I'll pass the floor on to Jérémie, who will talk about the underlying technology.
Thank you, Andrew, and hello, everyone. So I have 3 minutes to tell you a bit about the software and the tool that we built during this project. The main problem that we are trying to solve with tools is that data visualization requires expertise, right? So either you can use very simple tools as a journalist that requires no coding skills, etc., or you need to collaborate with experts. And since we were lucky enough to be able to collaborate across institutions, so with journalists, but also with a media partner, we wanted to learn from the experience of this collaboration and build software on top. So we really wanted to push this collaboration. And also, we were lucky enough to have one student that was doing an internship at Heidi.news. So we were able to observe how to put this collaboration in place. And also, the constant problem that we have when building visualization is the fact that it's really slow compared to the average news cycle. So really we're trying to accelerate this process. Now, about the opportunities of data journalism, of course, we wanted to exploit those. So we wanted to create highly interactive content because we think that this adds a lot of value to a news article. And also automation. So I think this is pretty exciting because we were able to redefine some new article formats, because if the graph and the visualization update themselves, then you need to think about your article on the longer term. So in very short, what we built is a layer between the workflow of data scientists and journalists. So they keep the same workflow, but they can just exchange data. So data scientists can store their visualization on a server and share what they built with the media through a simple link that could be embedded in a news article. And so the figures are dynamic. So this was very handy, for example, for tracking the COVID cases that we grabbed from the tweets every morning from OFSP. And finally, Andrew briefly mentioned that we wanted to build a bit of a knowledge base to inform the public about technical terms. So we built a small tool that is a system of cards that appear on top of an article and explain technical terms with references, etc. And so this is open source. It's an extendable system that you can reuse, and there are a ton more stuff. So if you want to know more, please talk to us after in the demo. And I will now leave the stage to Sarah from IMI.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Andrew and Jérémie. First of all, I'm very happy that Heidi.news had the opportunity to be a media partner on this project. And I'm here to give you a feedback on the newsroom side and maybe on a bit more operational level. So first of all, a few words about why climate change. Why did we choose to work on climate change? Because we believe that there are several challenges about showing the data about climate change. First of all, it's very complex, and we have to choose the right level of complexity for readers, so that maybe a reader with a lot of science background will find it satisfying and interesting, and the same for maybe another reader who is not as who is maybe a bit more a beginner. So that was the first challenge. But I would say that in a context that there are fake news, of course, but there is also maybe a bit more insidious form of passive climate skepticism, I would say. And this passive climate skepticism is sometimes because data have not been properly shown to people. Sometimes they have been manipulated. So it's really relevant just to ask ourselves, what is the bare minimum in data required to understand the climate change and the associated challenges? So we ask ourselves these questions in an editorial team with a developer. So a developer was François, who was a developer from the EPFL, was doing an internship at Heidi.news. And we came up with a dashboard divided in 4 chapters. And these chapters, the first one was how do we know that climate change is real? So we we shown the rise of temperatures linked with greenhouse gas rising. The second one was how do we know that human is responsible for this climate change? The third chapter was what are the other collateral damages, I would say, such as disasters, air pollution, the looming big crises such as biodiversity crisis. So these are some other threats related to climate change. And the fourth chapter was just showing very quickly what is done, what are the solutions, and of course we know that the solutions are not enough. So of course it was a proof of concept. There is room for improvement, and we are working to improve it, and I will say a few words about it later. But maybe a few words about how did we work. We work in, it was quite classic. We worked in this small team with some 4 people, science journalist, the EPFL developer, and a new format journalist. And what was great, in my opinion, was that we had a developer just for this project. Because when we work on data project, usually in-house developers are really overworked with other things than editorial, and it really gives us the opportunity to brainstorm and imagine freely without being hindered by technical challenges or the lack of time to find the real good source with the right technical format, I don't know, CSV or JSON, and it was really a huge relief. We were just focusing on what we want to show, and that's what I found really interesting. And I said earlier that there were room for improvement, of course, and there were Andrew worked on a user survey with readers, and they gave us some very interesting insights. And from this, we are now at IMI working on a V2 of the project of the climate dashboard, and we hope it will be ready for the end of February for the release of the second part of the next IPCC report. And that's it, and I hope that we can generalize the idea to other relevant topics such as biodiversity crisis, which would deserve its own dashboard of its own. So that's it. And that's something important that I missed. Of course, we have learned what could also be improved in this project, and maybe we could have improved the knowledge transfer at the end, because when François from the EPFL left, it was not so easy for us journalists just to continue to use the technical tools. So that's something that can inform maybe other projects just to do better than us. And I think I don't have the time for this slide. And I would like to thank everyone who worked on this project. So especially the people who are not here today, you can see them on the screen. And if you have any question, we're here at the stand behind, so don't hesitate to come later and we'll be happy to answer you. Thank you very much for your time.